Everything begins in the mind. Before a single action is taken, before a word is spoken, before a result is seen, there is a thought. It is thought that lays the foundation for every choice, every habit, every direction in life. Nothing truly meaningful happens outside of you until something powerful happens within you. Most people walk through life unaware that the world they experience is simply a reflection of the mindset they carry. They point to circumstances, luck, or other people as the reasons for where they are. But the truth is far more personal. The life you live right now is the direct result of the thoughts you've repeated, the beliefs you've accepted, and the decisions you've made when no one else was watching. The mind is the invisible architect of destiny. It doesn't ask for attention, but it determines everything. Most people treat their mind like background noise. They let it run wild, never realizing it is writing the script of their future. They allow fear, doubt, and limitation to occupy the most powerful space they own, not because they want to fail, but because they've never been taught how to think differently. They've never been told that their inner dialogue becomes their external reality. What you believe becomes what you pursue. What you expect becomes what you tolerate. What you think about over and over again eventually shapes who you become. The most dangerous thing about a limited mindset is how invisible it is. You don't see it. You feel it. You feel it in your hesitation, in your self-sabotage, in your procrastination. You feel it in the quiet voice that says, "This is just the way things are." That voice isn't the truth. It's the echo of old programming. And unless it's challenged, it becomes your ceiling. The real battlefield is not outside in the world. It's in the mind where no one else can fight for you. Until you win there, nothing outside will truly move. You cannot outperform your mindset. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how talented you are, or how badly you want something. If your mind is wired for limitation, your results will mirror that. This is why change feels so difficult. Not because change is impossible, but because the old mindset fights to survive. It whispers doubts, manufactures excuses, and clings to the familiar. It would rather protect comfort than risk transformation. But the life you dream of cannot be built with the thoughts that built the life you're trying to escape. The mind must be trained, reprogrammed, strengthened like a muscle. And it begins with awareness, seeing that your thoughts are not random, but repeated patterns that are either empowering or imprisoning you. The moment you choose to take ownership of what you think, you reclaim your power. You move from victim to creator. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it, not through force, but through mental clarity, focus, and belief. This is the truth most avoid because it demands responsibility. It says, if my life is a reflection of my mind, then I must change what I allow in. That means guarding your attention, choosing your beliefs, refusing to let fear think for you. This is not an overnight shift. It is a daily decision, but it is the most important one you will ever make, because every transformation begins the same way, in the silence of a single thought that says, I will no longer think like this. Change does not begin with motivation. It begins with mindset. Until you change the way you think, you will always return to the same patterns. But once your mindset is aligned with your highest vision, you become unstoppable. Your actions gain force. Your decisions gain clarity. Your life gains direction. Everything you want begins in the mind, not tomorrow, not later, right now. Most people remain trapped in the same cycle not because they lack talent, not because they don't have enough time, and not because they aren't capable. They remain trapped because they continue to think with the same mind that created their limitations. They've unknowingly built their identity around fear, hesitation, and perceived inadequacy. They tell themselves the same internal story every day. I'm not ready yet. I don't know enough. What if I fail? These are not facts. They're beliefs. And beliefs, when left unchecked, become self-fulfilling prophecies. What the mind accepts as true, the body follows. Actions become hesitant. Opportunities are avoided. And over time, life shrinks to fit the size of that mental cage. People aren't suffering because life is cruel. They're suffering because they haven't realized how much power they're giving away to their old thought patterns. They wait for something outside of them to change. They wait for motivation. They wait for permission. They wait for the perfect timing. But all the waiting does is reinforce the belief that something is missing, that they are not yet enough. that they must postpone progress until conditions are ideal. That moment never comes. And so they stay stuck, not because of real obstacles, but because of the illusions their mind keeps replaying. The longer these patterns are repeated, the more permanent they feel. The more a person tells themselves a story of limitation, the more evidence they start collecting to prove it's true. They surround themselves with people who think the same way. They internalize failure as identity rather than feedback. They convince themselves that change is for other people, that success belongs to the lucky. But the truth is simple and unchanging. Life bends not to the hopeful, but to the mentally prepared. Until you disrupt the inner dialogue that's been keeping you small, you will live a life far beneath what you were born to experience. Breaking free begins with brutal honesty. You must confront the fact that your current mindset is either building your future or destroying your potential. You cannot change what you're unwilling to acknowledge, and you cannot rise while clinging to beliefs that are rooted in fear. The key is not more information, it's transformation, and that starts when you challenge everything you once accepted as normal. Living without purpose is like sailing without a compass. Movement exists, but there is no meaningful direction. A life without a clear aim drifts in and out of distractions, pulled by the loudest voices and the strongest temptations. When the mind is not focused, energy is scattered. And where energy is scattered, progress becomes impossible. The shift from wandering to purpose is not just about setting goals. It's about building your identity around something greater than comfort, fear, or temporary pleasure. Purpose transforms decision-making. It eliminates confusion, reduces emotional noise, and turns every action into a step towards something meaningful. Purpose is not a luxury reserved for the gifted. It's a necessity for anyone who wants to live a life that actually matters. Without it, people chase short-term highs and confuse busyness with impact. They work hard but feel empty. They achieve things but remain disconnected. They succeed on the outside yet feel lost on the inside. This is the cost of living without clarity. You can have all the tools, the resources, and the time, but without a central mission driving your life, none of it creates lasting fulfillment. Purpose is not found in comfort zones. It's discovered when you decide that your existence will no longer be random or reactive, but intentional and focused. Clarity of purpose turns ordinary people into forces of nature. Once the mind locks on to a definite aim, distractions lose their power. Noise fades, opinions weaken, and excuses disappear. That's because purpose gives you a reason to rise when it's hard, a reason to stay disciplined when it's inconvenient, a reason to move forward when doubt whispers that you're not enough. When you live with purpose, life starts responding differently. You no longer chase what doesn't belong to you. You no longer entertain what doesn't align with your vision. Purpose is a filter, and only the things that serve your mission get through. The shift isn't difficult to understand, but it takes courage to implement. It requires letting go of vague dreams and choosing a specific path. It requires choosing mastery over mediocrity, direction over distraction, and intention over impulse. When your life becomes centered around a clear, compelling purpose, your future no longer feels uncertain. It feels inevitable. There is a massive difference between hoping and believing, though on the surface they may appear similar. Hope is passive. It waits, it wonders, and it wavers. It carries the energy of uncertainty, of maybe, of someday. Belief, on the other hand, is grounded in decision. It does not beg for signs. It does not ask for permission. It does not look outward for confirmation. Belief operates from the inside out. It says, I have already decided, and my actions will now reflect that decision. This shift from hoping to believing is one of the most life-altering transformations a person can experience because it changes how they show up for everything. Hope can carry you through difficulty, but only belief can drive consistent action. Hope desires, but belief builds. Hope waits for the right time, but belief declares that now is the time. When you operate from belief, you no longer seek validation. You no longer depend on circumstances to give you courage. You act boldly, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. That's because belief is not about certainty. It's about commitment. It's not about knowing everything will work out. It's about knowing that you will keep moving until it does. Belief produces a kind of inner authority that cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks or outside opinions. People who stay stuck often say they're waiting for more knowledge, waiting for support, waiting for the fear to go away. But what they're really doing is postponing belief. They are hoping things will change without being willing to act like change is already underway. This mindset keeps them frozen, watching life happen instead of shaping it. But the moment a person truly believes in their vision, everything changes. Time is used differently. Energy is directed differently. Choices are made with greater conviction. There is a calm intensity that follows belief. It grounds you, focuses you, and pushes you beyond your old limitations. This shift cannot be faked. Either you believe or you don't. And if you don't, it's not a sign to stop. It's a signal to strengthen. Strengthen your vision, your values, and your commitment. Because once belief is locked in, action becomes automatic. And when belief fuels your actions, the world begins to move in response. You stop waiting for opportunity and start creating it. Failure is not the enemy. It is the instructor. It is the raw material of growth, the feedback system of mastery. And yet, for most people, failure is feared more than stagnation. The fear of failing has stopped more dreams than failure itself ever could. But this fear is not based on reality. It's based on identity. People are not truly afraid of failing. They're afraid of what they believe failure says about them. They've been conditioned to associate mistakes with shame, rejection, or inadequacy. But the truth is, the only real failure is refusing to try. Everything else is simply part of the process of becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. When the mind shifts from fearing failure to embracing it as a teacher, everything changes. You stop avoiding challenges and start seeking them. You stop hesitating and begin experimenting. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what can I learn? This mindset creates freedom. Freedom from perfectionism, freedom from people's opinions, and freedom from the pressure to get everything right the first time. The path to mastery is not a straight line. It is built on repetition, refinement, and resilience. Those who achieve greatness are not those who avoid falling. They are those who fall often and rise faster each time. The fear of failure comes from ego, not truth. It's the ego that demands flawless performance. It's the ego that resists being seen as wrong. But growth has nothing to do with protecting ego. In fact, growth requires that the ego be humbled, broken, and rebuilt over and over again. Every mistake is a mirror showing where improvement is needed. Every setback is a doorway to greater strength. The ones who rise are the ones who see obstacles as invitations, not interruptions. If you are serious about transforming your life, you must train your mind to welcome failure, not run from it. Reframe it, redefine it, respect it. Because failure is not the end of the path, it is the path. The mind that learns to interpret failure as feedback becomes unstoppable. And when failure is no longer something you fear, there is nothing left to hold you back from your highest potential. Discipline is the silent force behind every extraordinary result. It's not glamorous, it doesn't demand attention, but it is always present in lives that are marked by purpose, consistency, and true achievement. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act, not realizing that motivation is fleeting, but discipline is reliable. Discipline is not about how you feel, it's about who you've decided to become. It's about choosing what matters most over what feels easy in the moment. When your mindset shifts from chasing motivation to building discipline, you stop relying on emotion and start depending on identity. The disciplined mind understands that feelings are temporary, but consequences are lasting. It knows that comfort will always offer itself as an escape, but every escape has a price. The price is your vision, your potential, your time. Discipline doesn't mean you never struggle or that you never feel tired. It means you move anyway. You rise anyway. You keep the promise you made to yourself even when no one is watching, even when the reward is distant, even when the resistance is loud. That is the true measure of mental strength. Not how excited you are at the start, but how committed you remain when the excitement fades. Without discipline, talent becomes wasted, dreams remain unfulfilled, potential stays untapped. The mind that has not been trained for discipline will always find excuses that sound logical, but lead to regret. It will justify procrastination. It will rationalize inconsistency. It will convince you that starting tomorrow is just as good as starting today. But discipline silences those lies. It says, I've chosen who I am becoming, and my actions will reflect that now, not later. This shift creates momentum, and momentum compounds. Over time, small acts of discipline create massive changes, not because each action is revolutionary, but because the consistency behind them is unshakable. When you stop depending on motivation and build a life around discipline, you free yourself. You free yourself from the roller coaster of emotional highs and lows. You gain control over your time, your energy, your direction. You become dependable, not just to others, but to yourself. And that self-trust becomes the foundation for a life that is not only successful, but unbreakable. The way you interpret your reality determines whether it empowers you or imprisons you. Two people can face the same situation. One sees a challenge and grows. The other sees a wall and retreats. The difference isn't in the circumstances, it's in the meaning assigned to them. The mind is a meaning-making machine. Every experience is filtered through your beliefs, past emotions, and expectations. But when your interpretation of events is rooted in fear, resentment, or helplessness, even neutral situations become threats. The shift from reactive perception to conscious interpretation is not optional, it is essential. Because how you see determines how you respond, and how you respond defines your future. Victim thinking is one of the most deceptive mental traps because it feels justified. It blames the world, circumstances, other people, even fate. But the deeper truth is this: as long as you keep pointing outward, you give away your inner power. You can't control every event, but you can control how you respond. And in that response lies all your strength, growth, and future direction. The most liberating moment in life is not when everything goes your way, it's when you realize that you are not defined by what happens to you, but by the meaning you assign to it. When you begin to see every hardship as a message, every obstacle as training, and every delay as refinement, your energy shifts. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? This question doesn't make pain disappear. It transforms pain into purpose. It reframes setbacks as strategy. It turns wounds into wisdom. This is not toxic positivity, it is grounded mental mastery. It is the decision to rise above circumstance by refusing to be ruled by it. It's the awareness that life will always test you, but you get to decide what each test will mean. This shift doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger, and strength leads to peace. Not the peace that comes from avoidance, but the peace that comes from knowing nothing can break you unless you allow it. When you choose to interpret your life through the lens of growth, responsibility, and inner strength, the world outside loses its power to control you. You become the author of your response and therefore the author of your life. Gratitude is one of the most underestimated forces of transformation, not because it's soft or poetic, but because it rewires the brain at the deepest levels. When your mind is trained to see what's missing, what's broken, or what hasn't yet happened, it operates from scarcity. It feels like there's never enough time, support, money, success, or progress. This mindset breeds frustration, anxiety, and restlessness. But the moment you shift to gratitude, not as a momentary feeling, but as a discipline, you begin to experience your life with entirely different eyes. You begin to see what is, rather than obsess over what isn't. Gratitude is not blind optimism. It does not ignore reality. It expands it. It allows you to find strength in the struggle, clarity in the chaos, and meaning in the mundane. People often think they need more to feel grateful, when in truth, gratitude is what makes you feel like you already have more. This shift doesn't just improve your emotional well-being, it sharpens your mental resilience. A grateful mind is harder to discourage. It sees lessons where others see loss. It sees provision where others see lack. And most importantly, it sees now as a gift, not just the future as a goal. Those who fail to practice gratitude often chase a finish line that keeps moving. Even when they achieve more, they feel less because they've trained their mind to only feel worthy once something new is accomplished. But when you develop a mindset of gratitude, you learn how to celebrate progress instead of punishing yourself for imperfection. You begin to recognize growth in the small things, and that recognition reinforces momentum. Gratitude anchors you in the present, even as you reach for more. It says, I am thankful for what I have, and that thankfulness gives me strength to pursue what's next. Gratitude is power, quiet power, unshakable power. It teaches you to lead your emotions rather than be led by them, and when practiced consistently, it elevates every area of life, not because the world changes, but because your awareness of its blessings deepens. You don't need perfect conditions to feel full. You need clear eyes and an open heart. Gratitude trains you to see that your life is already rich in ways you've been too distracted to notice, and that shift is the beginning of deep inner abundance. Many people spend their lives trying to control what they cannot. They obsess over outcomes, other people's opinions, the timing of events, or the behavior of the world around them. But in doing so, they exhaust themselves. They drain their energy into things they were never meant to control, leaving little strength for what actually matters, themselves. The shift from external control to internal mastery is one of the most powerful mindset changes a person can make. It means no longer reacting to life, but responding from a place of clarity. It means trading emotional chaos for calm responsibility. Because the truth is, while you can't control everything, you can always control your mindset, your focus, and your effort. Inner mastery begins the moment you stop blaming and start owning. Owning your attitude, owning your reactions, owning your habits and your direction. This doesn't mean everything that happens is your fault. It means that your power lies in how you meet what happens. A weak mind gives its energy to what it cannot influence. A strong mind invests its energy where it counts discipline, patience, learning, and alignment with higher principles. External conditions will always shift. Circumstances will challenge you. People will misunderstand you. But none of that can define you unless you give it permission. The mind that is governed by external forces is constantly unstable. It changes based on who's watching, what's trending, or whether the day feels smooth or difficult. But the mind governed by internal principles is steady. It acts from values, not moods. It's not easily thrown off course because it's rooted in something deeper than comfort. This kind of self-command doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from training, daily choices, repeated alignment, a decision to lead yourself with integrity regardless of what life throws at you. You gain real power when you realize the most important battles are always within, not outside. And once you win there, the outside world begins to shift in response, not because the world has changed, but because you have. And the person who has mastered their inner world becomes unshakable, calm in the storm, focused in the noise, and deeply grounded no matter what surrounds them. Most people are not limited by their potential. They are limited by their environment. Not just the physical environment, but the mental one, the people they surround themselves with, the voices they listen to, the beliefs they absorb without question. Your surroundings shape your standards. They either challenge you to rise or comfort you into staying small. When you shift your mindset from fitting in to standing out, everything changes. You stop tolerating mediocrity disguised as support. You stop shrinking your vision to avoid judgment. You stop allowing the average mindset of the crowd to define what is possible for you. Growth demands intentional separation, not from people as individuals, but from patterns that no longer serve your highest self. If your environment doesn't nourish your goals, it slowly poisons them. That's not emotional, it's strategic. You become like the energy you absorb most frequently. If the people around you settle, complain, or resist change, their energy seeps into your system. Over time, you begin to reflect it. But when you start seeking out environments of excellence, people who challenge you, conversations that stretch you, habits that sharpen you, you start reflecting something entirely different. Your mind rises to the level of its influences. It's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. You don't need to reject people to protect your growth. You simply need to choose what gets your time and what no longer earns your energy. Clarity will cost you comfort, but it will reward you with purpose. This mindset shift is uncomfortable at first because it often means being misunderstood, walking alone for a season, or facing the silence that comes when noise is removed. But that silence is sacred. It is where identity forms, where your voice gets louder than the opinions around you. And once you taste that clarity, you can never unsee your potential. The standard you accept in your environment becomes the ceiling of your own performance. Raise the standard and you raise your life. Choose environments that reflect the future you're building, not the past you're trying to escape. And when you do, you'll realize it's not luck or talent that accelerates your growth. It's alignment. Strategic, intentional alignment with the people, spaces, and energies that breathe life into your vision. One of the most overlooked but powerful mindset shifts is moving from urgency to patience. In a world addicted to speed, the pressure to achieve quickly can become overwhelming. People want results now, success now, transformation now, but real growth, the kind that lasts, is never instant. It is built in layers over time, through repetition, through failure, and through the unseen work that no one applauds. When you trade the obsession with quick outcomes for a commitment to the long game, you unlock a deeper kind of power, one that's rooted in maturity, focus, and inner stability. Patience is not passivity. It is not waiting without action. It is active persistence. It is showing up day after day, planting seeds even when the harvest hasn't come, trusting the process when nothing seems to be moving. The impatient mind constantly second-guesses itself, shifts directions too quickly, and burns out before momentum can take hold. But the patient mind is deliberate. It doesn't chase every trend or panic at every delay. It remains centered, not because the path is easy, but because the purpose is clear. Patience is the invisible force behind mastery, because mastery takes time. Every meaningful transformation comes with seasons of silence, periods where you are putting in the work and getting little recognition, moments where you are growing roots, even if there are no visible results yet. Most people quit in those moments, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked patience. They mistook delay for denial. But the truth is, life tests your endurance before it rewards your effort. If you can stay planted through the dry season, the harvest always arrives, stronger, richer, and more lasting than anything built in haste. This mindset doesn't just make you more resilient, it makes you more dangerous. Because the person who is patient cannot be rushed, they are not easily discouraged. They don't need overnight success to feel worthy. They understand that greatness is built slowly, deliberately, and often in silence. When you adopt this mindset, time becomes your ally, not your enemy. And in a world that chases speed but lacks depth, your patience becomes your superpower. The final and perhaps most life-altering mindset shift is this: from proving to becoming. So many people are trapped in a cycle of trying to prove themselves to the world, to their families, to their past, or even to their own doubts. They chase achievement not from joy, but from fear. Every goal becomes a performance. Every failure feels like a personal indictment. But when you release the need to prove and instead commit to becoming, you liberate yourself from the weight of comparison, validation, and perfectionism. You stop striving to be impressive and start choosing to be authentic. And authenticity is where true power lives. The need to prove is rooted in insecurity. It's driven by a belief that you are not enough as you are, that worth must be earned, that value must be demonstrated. But this mindset exhausts the soul. It turns life into a competition. It causes you to measure your worth by external metrics, status, applause, likes, approval. And yet no amount of validation can sustain you if you don't believe in your own becoming. The most successful and fulfilled people aren't chasing identity. They're building it, brick by brick, with quiet commitment. They don't need to prove, because they've already chosen who they are becoming. When you shift into the mindset of becoming, you stop comparing your timeline to someone else's. You stop asking whether you're ahead or behind. You realize that your only competition is who you were yesterday. This mindset creates freedom. Freedom to experiment, to evolve, to stretch into higher versions of yourself without the pressure to be perfect. You begin to take bolder risks, not because you need to prove your greatness, but because you're hungry to explore it. You're no longer seeking permission to rise. You're rising because it's who you're meant to be. The journey of becoming is not a destination. It's a daily choice. It's the quiet discipline to grow, the courage to shed old layers, and the grace to honor who you are while reaching for who you're becoming. When you no longer need to prove, you begin to live, fully, freely, and with purpose. And that is where transformation begins, not in performance, but in presence, not in impressing others, but in embodying the truth of your own becoming